Ornaxus Eridae rides at the front of a small caravan through the foothills of Akshish, near the desert of Yota, with his two sons, Etam and Datava, his eldest daughter Taraxime, and 24 of their slaves, both male and female. "I cannot fathom what you saw in either of those men," the elder Eridae speaks with a strange voice, as his nose was just recently broken. "Swine, that is all those lowly men are. They are not good enough for you," Ornaxus says, disappointed in his only daughter's choices. The Dwarka do not value monogamy or wedding ceremonies, so his disappointment is more with their character and city of origin. For a major port city rich in diversity, Dwarka sees rural cities such as Kataltakuk as beneath them. "Enkidu is still the strongest and most fierce man I have ever met," Taraxime replies, thinking fondly of their time together, despite her anger with him. Ornaxus shakes his head slowly. "You are still smitten with that lowly dog." Taraxime's eyes light up with intensity, and all gentleness is instantly gone. "That man came into our home and defiled our gods. He stole from me my child, and spat upon everything that my family holds in reverence. The first thing I'm going to do is go into the temple where he worships, and relieve myself upon whatever holy place that I might find," Datava laughs. "Perhaps the religion of Kataltakuk keeps virgin maidens that I'll be able to sully," Etam adds, also laughing. "With Enkidu out of the way, you can do whatever you like," Taraxime says. "He is the only warrior in the city worth any thought." Ornaxus grins, looking down at the massive curved blade strapped to his thigh. "I will take Enkidu's head and offer his entrails to Nyarlathotep for supplication." Several of the servants riding ahead of them pause, speaking to each other frantically in their native Zenimbian. "What is the problem?" Ornaxus growls, annoyed by any delays. He does not like being away from his home in Dwarka, or leaving his younger brother in charge of family affairs. The Eridae clan is one of the more powerful families of Dwarka, and have tremendous influence. "They claim that they saw shadows moving amongst the rocks," says Heshbon, the servant liaison. "The North Ashes Pass is rocky, and there are many places for an ambush to lie in wait." "We are in the wilderness," Ornaxus scoffs. "There are sure to be many shadows out here." "There are Zenimbian stories of vicious creatures that inhabit the deserts and devour hapless victims," Heshbon says. "I have heard all about the ghouls, and they are nothing but legends," Ornaxus replies. "No such beings exist." One of the slaves begins speaking loudly, trying to get their attention. "What is he saying now?" Ornaxus asks. "He says that it is not ghouls that stalk us, but demons." Ornaxus laughs dismissively. "There are no such creatures." The caravan continues onward despite the protests of the slaves. "Will Kataltakuk stand up for Enkidu?" Etam asks. "I doubt the city would stand by idly while we come to kill their great champion." "The people of Kataltakuk are nothing without Enkidu," Taraxime says. "If he dies, our slaves alone could take the city." "When we find that pig dog, do not allow him to escape," Ornaxus growls. "If he hides in his temple, burn the damned thing to the ground with him inside." "And if he is still in possession of your son?" Etam asks Taraxime. "The child would be better off as a sacrifice to Nyarlathotep than to be raised by those priests," Taraxime responds with coldness. Ornaxus pauses and holds a hand up to halt the caravan as he sees smoke in the distance. He instructs 3 of his servants to scout ahead and discover the origin of the smoke. 20 minutes later, the men return and describe a ruined village with bodies lying in the streets. "There does not appear to be any survivors, my lord," one of the servants reports, still trembling. "Many were skinned and had large amounts of flesh missing, as if they'd been devoured." "Ghouls?" Ornaxis whispers, contemplating the impossible existence of the creatures he dismissed so easily before. Ornaxis waves his hands to instruct the others to dismount and draw their swords. "Let us go wide around the village and avoid whatever caused this destruction. Protect our rear and guard against marauders." After several more hours of riding, the procession nears the more arid regions comprising the easternmost edges of the desert of Iota, and last landmark before crossing the Uzal River and reaching the city of Kataltakuk. Do not show any aggression towards the city guards manning the gates. "I shall gain us admittance inside without any violence," Traxime says. "Should we not also kill the boy's father?" Tom asks. "Iasion is devout to me. Even after my betrayal, he shall do whatever I ask." Traxime smiles. "He will accompany us back to Dwarka, and if he becomes a problem, we shall sacrifice him. We need only kill Enkidu. No one else concerns us. Should a battle break out, our numbers will not be sufficient enough for our victory," Ornaxis says. Ornaxis suddenly tumbles from his steed, an arrow driven through his throat. "Father!" Itam screams, leaping from his horse and diving to Ornaxis' side. He takes an arrow to the right thigh as he tries to shield his father as the elder man chokes on his own blood. "Form a circle with the horses and protect us!" he screams at the slaves. "Where are the arrows coming from?" Tatava shouts, diving behind a wagon for cover. The horses of the caravan scatter in fear or fall as easy targets for the Sakari archers. Captain Rivius wonders why the humans use such weak animals as mounts. The Sakari Upas could handle dozens of arrows and continue charging. They may not be as swift, but the lizards are far more durable. He judges that most of the humans they encounter will be as poorly equipped to deal with his army as Benares or this pathetic caravan. "There!" a large slave shouts, pointing. "Hiding among the rocks!" Stationed along the foothills of the Akshis Mountains, the Sakari force uses the steppes to conceal and protect their numbers. Should any of the humans successfully escape, the experienced captain does not want accurate information getting out on his group. The hail of arrows continues, felling 2 more horses and a handful of slaves. "Can we reach the rocks ourselves?" Traxime asks. Hesbon shakes his head. "It's too open to make a run for it. Their archers would make short work of us." "What if we push the wagons on and use them for shielding? Can we make it then?" Tatava asks, trying to come up with a solution before there's no one left to save. He looks over at his father and closes his eyes, tensing with anger and pain. To escape, they will have to leave their father's body behind. "If we can get away, they will not pursue for long. These are ambush attackers. It's unlikely their horses are nearby enough for them to be readily available for chase," Hesbon replies. "We send the caravan in multiple directions while we head for the edge of the wastes. If we're lucky, we'll be able to ride straight through nightfall and reach Kataltakuk," Itam says. Hesbon reaches up, withdrawing one of the arrows from the wagon behind them. "I do not believe these fiends to be mere thieves. These arrows are unlike any I have ever seen. If we are not cautious, we may fall prey to other trickery." Captain Rivius leads his forces in closer, continuing to rain down arrows. The Sakari scowls, looking on as arrows collect into the sides of wagons and already felled corpses. "Do not just waste your shots hoping they will get through," Rivius shouts. He raises a hand, focusing his energy into his palm before releasing it back outwards in a pulse blast that explodes into one of the wagons and scatters the people using it for cover. "If your target is obscured, remove the obstruction," he says with irritation. Bursts of energy are fired from the Sicari's position, destroying each wagon of the caravan. Moaning in pain, Taraxime struggles to crawl from the burning remains of their wagon. Her brother Itam lies motionless nearby, smoke rolling off his charred back. "You have a long way to crawl if you wish to escape us," Rivius says with a smile, putting a foot on the center of the young woman's back and pressing her down to halt her flight. Heshbon howls with fury, leaping at Rivius with a large, handleless blade. The muscular slave takes several arrows to his back, but continues forward on pure adrenaline and rage. Rivius is amazed the man can still be standing after such considerable wounds, but easily sidesteps his charge. The Sicari drives a knee into Heshbon's chest, before backhanding him across the face. The slave crashes to the ground and rolls several feet before moving no more. "You may be large, but you lack any type of real skill," Rivius mocks. "Are you considered to be one of this world's warriors? If so, humanity stands less of a chance at survival than we anticipated." Ditava attacks from behind, attempting to drive a knife through the Sicari's back. An arrow from one of the captain's subordinates fells the attacker before he can make any contact. Rivius turns around with surprise and suddenly seethes with anger at nearly being killed by a lowly human. Breathing heavily, Ditava clings to life and breaks the arrow, piercing his side in half. He drools blood from his lips, yet he stands back up to face his enemies. "You are indeed a tough one," Rivius says, impressed. "I imagine you would be too stubborn to become a useful servant. Only those with a weak will tend to be pliable enough to take orders effectively." He moves like a blur, thrusting the claw of his index finger through Ditava's forehead. "A pity. It is doubtful that I will encounter another monkey with your similar spirit." "Brother!" Taraxime screams before being kicked in the ribs by a Sicari soldier. Rivius approaches, seeing now that Heshbon too has begun to stir with movement. "Stay down, you beast. Your death is not necessary, yet I shall not be bothered by it in the least." Heshbon rises, trying to slash Rivius across the chest with the large blade. The Sicari leaps back in surprise, assuming the wounded man had dropped his weapon before. Extending a hand, Rivius again focuses his strength into his palm and releases a pulse of energy that leaves a smoking hole straight through Heshbon's chest. "Strip their horses down and salt the meat for travel." Rivius smiles as he sees the dark-skinned slave girls huddling for protection inside the caravan, beside Taraxime and her brothers. "Try to take the females alive. We can never have too many slaves to sell." He glances back at the procession of 260 bound slaves from Benares, already in tow. The Grigori Yazata, named Gadriel, appears before the Sicari scouting party in a flash of light. The Sicari shield their eyes from the brilliant radiance of the divine being. Unlike the Yazata, who followed Sane and Sataniel's rebellions, the Grigori have not lost any of their strength or abilities. "Captain, I bring new orders from King Marduk." Rivius halts his procession. "What change is so important that you are needed to reach me immediately?" "You will no longer stage your attack on the city of Levant to the west. You shall now head north to the city of Katatakuk where the mortal who opened the gateway to your realm resides." "Why?" Rivius asks, cautious of the Yazata. He does not understand why his king trusts the creatures. "It has been decided that killing the one who opened the doorway is top priority in order to prevent said path from being closed again." The captain pauses, contemplating the strategy. "Yes, that does seem to be a sound tactic. It would be grave for our forces should the door be closed before the Queen and the generals come through." Gadriel nods. "Or worse, it being closed after they arrive and all are trapped here in the human world." Rivius is about to say more, but the Grigori vanishes once more with his ability of Shunkonido. "You heard him. We have a new destination. Onward to Gatal-Takuk." After successfully ambushing the caravan of the Eridae clan just inside the North Ashes Pass, Captain Rivius leads his contingent further north, towards the closest city of Gatal-Takuk. The provisions that the soldiers gathered on their captain's orders have gotten them through the harsh Idiota Desert. The cured meat provides valuable protein that gives the army enough energy to push on. Many of the Benares prisoners have not been as fortunate. Dozens perished during the journey and their bodies were left to the beasts of the wild. Though most of the Eridae caravan was killed during the attack, their supplies were raided and added to the Sakari stores. "Unshackle us," the Sakari called in Nasria begs. He, along with several hundred other prisoners from Na-Rain's dungeons, make up the front line of Rivius' scouting force. "How can you expect us to fight with our hands bound in this manner?" Rivius pauses, halting his Upas. "You survived the last city with no problem." And Azura growls with anger, reliving the horrific experience of the prisoners to both his left and right being cut down by human swords. He had to crawl across many lifeless bodies in order to catch up with Rivius' party so as to not be left behind. "The next city is larger and will have more formidable defenses," Nasria says. "Do you honestly think that I would release you? Perhaps I should give you a sword and an Upas as well." Rivius draws his blade and holds it against Nasria's neck. "You're lucky to even still be drawing breath. Were it up to me, I would have executed you for your crimes." "I am more useful to you with a weapon in my hands," Nasria argues. "My skills cannot be denied." "Your skills?" Rivius laughs. "None of the abilities you possess are your own. You murdered the owners of those abilities and stole them." Nasria shrugs. "They're mine now regardless." Rivius strikes the prisoner across the face with the hilt of his sword, bringing in Nasria to a knee. "If you want to survive this at all, you will learn your place." Unable to wipe his face, Nasria looks up with blood running down his lips and nose. "If you had any skills worth adding to my own, I would see you dead personally." Rivius orders a cord to be attached to his Upas, and through the restraints of the other Sakari prisoners. "Keep up, or I will drag what is left of you to our destination." The scouting party continues on, getting closer and closer to the city of Gatal-Takuk, nestled to the north of the Idiota Desert. Ahead, the Uzal River comes into view. "What exactly was your crime?" the Sakari prisoner Sainkal asks. "The capital made me their most wanted criminal after I killed 40 of their elite soldiers and stole their powers. Before I was caught by the generals, I'd managed to add the rare abilities of another 24 warriors and sages to my growing collection." Sinkhal nods. I see now why they fear you. Returning to the dwelling of his kinsman, Enkidu again pounds on his fists on the door of Iasion. Dark clouds hang over the man's home, and the air is thick with magic. Enkidu can no longer deny that his cousin has indeed cast a foul spell in his grief, one that has put the lives of everyone in the city in danger. The stench of magic does not lie, cousin. I know you have done something terrible, Enkidu shouts, still banging on the door. What beasts of hell have you summoned forth? Leave this city and her people out of your vengeance. If you seek retribution, seek it against me alone. It was I who wronged you. Do not punish Katal for my crimes. Iasion shivers in his room, the dark magic draining him of all warmth. He is restless and has not slept or eaten for days. The man's tanned skin is now pale and gaunt. What has been done cannot be undone, he says coldly. Begone, and trouble me no more, defiler of vows and oaths. Your criticisms of me are fair, but I will not stand by and allow you to do harm to innocent lives. Call off whatever foul demon you have wrought and challenge me face to face like a man. Challenge you? You are a warrior, and I would surely die, Iasion shouts with a snake-like hiss. Of course you would want a confrontation to be skewed in your favor. No. With magic, I have even the odds between us. Your advantages against me are melted away. It is that fear and uncertainty that drives you to this desperation. No, I shall not end my wrath against you. Not until your lifeless body falls dead at my feet shall my vengeance abide. Damn you! Enkidu screams. Do you want your own son to perish? I have snatched him from the jaws of the serpent, and you put him in mortal danger with your so-called vengeance. Iasion is thrown off. Galen is here in the city. Do not listen to his lies, Sane whispers into his mind. He seeks only to make you call off your attack. He knows that you have the advantage, and will do whatever he can to take that advantage away. How do I know that you are speaking the truth? Iasion asks, suspiciously. If you end this madness, I shall take you to him, and together the two of you can undo the pain that both I and Tarax may have caused you. I want you to bring my son to me now. I will do no such thing, Enkidu screams. Not so long as you surround yourself with evil and dark magic. Lies! Poisonous serpents spew forth from your mouth in every single breath you take. Begone from my sight and do not let me set my eyes upon you again until you are but a corpse. Streaks of electrical energy crackle from the clouds above Iasion's home, forcing Enkidu into retreat. He can no longer approach the home safely, and curses his kin for the path he has taken in his anger and grief. The sounding of a loud ram's horn draws the man's attention back towards the city's main gates. A pair of young female riders approach the city gates of Katal, looking distraught. Amastis immediately recognizes one of the girls as the spirited daughter of stable owner Bashan. Rebellious and headstrong, Lianlim is also the single most capable horse rider and archer in the entire region. Open the gates, Amastis says, raising a hand to signal the wall guards. The captain goes down to speak with the girls, wondering why they're out alone. Seeing Lianlim's frightened countenance, he knows it would take something significant to make her lose her composure. Why have you been riding so hard? He asks. up close seeing the redness of the wind burns on their cheeks and the heavy breathing of both girls and their steeds. "Fires!" Lianlin pants. "Massive fires and smoke!" "From where?" Amastus presses, knowing full well the dangers of an out-of-control wildfire. "Benares," Lianlin replies. "Jubei and I were going there to meet with Leva, because I heard of him getting hold of a lightning-fast horse from the land of Zered." "The two of you traveled across the desert to Benares without an armed escort, just to see a horse?" Amastus asks, finding it difficult to suppress his anger. "Possibly the world's fastest horse," Lianlin corrects defiantly. "If we ran into any trouble, I had my bow and plenty of arrows. And Jubei was giving us spell orb by Fausto." Amastus groans. "You trust that old drunkard? The spell orb he gave you is likely worthless, if it even activates at all." Lianlin shrugs. "Regardless, we did not reach Benares. We saw the smoke, and then the fires, so we rushed back here to tell you. The two of us would have been little help against a raging fire." "You did well coming back home." Amastus gives Lianlin a lingering gaze of disapproval. "But next time, do not go beyond the gates without an escort." Lianlin laughs. "I do not need an escort. I'm a better fighter than most of your men." "Then give up your stubborn wild streak and join my guard." "I have no interest in spending my days surrounded by sweaty, stinking men." Amastus leaves to organize some of the city guard to ride out to Benares and investigate the fires. If the city itself is burning, little can be done to stop the flames. The Uzal River is miles away, and by the time they could ferry the water back to the city, it would be too late. The best any of them can do is pray that the flames are not coming from Benares, but instead a portion of the wilderness, so that they can redirect them from the city and evacuate its citizens. At one time, Kataltakuk had 3 active temple priests and 1 warrior priest. After Fausto left the priesthood, only Ishmael and Esquiel were left to deal with the many duties of the temple. The religion of Kataltakuk is not confined to the village, having other temples spread throughout the Uzal River region. Monotheistic religions are looked down upon by the majority of people, however, with one deity being prayed to for each of the specific needs of the masses being preferable. As news spreads of the fires being seen coming from Benares, the temples bustle with villagers coming to offer prayers and burn sacrificial offerings of birds and livestock. "We do not know for sure that Benares has fallen," Esquiel tells a woman who is weeping for her 2 sons living in the desert village. "Continue to offer your prayers and fast, but do not despair. The fires could signal a great many things." Ishmael approaches, carrying incense and aromatic oils. There is much concern in the air. Many are fearful of the fate of the people of Benares. Captain Amastus has ridden out with several of the city guard to investigate the fires. If Benares has befallen some tragedy, we will do our best to console the grieving and provide aid for the survivors. More villagers come and pray, drawing the priests away from each other to attend to their needs. The temple continues to fill, nearing capacity. While the overworked priests attend to the faithful, Simeon works to clean the altars of old burnt offerings and replace the incenses and oils. While the teen is busy scrubbing one of the altars, one of the girls who observed the fires coming from Benares enters the temple. "Simeon?" Jubei whispers. It's clear that the girl is deeply troubled and her eyes are reddened by tears. "Do you need to see one of the priests?" Simeon asks. "They are both occupied, but I am sure they'll be with you shortly." She shakes her head. "I came to speak with you." Simeon is surprised. Me? Why me? I'm still but an apprentice. The captain does not know what he is riding into. Lianlim did not tell him everything. What do you mean? He asks, confused. We did not just see the smoke and the fires. Jubei shudders, reliving frightening memories. There were also bodies. In the desert? That far from the village? Lianlim told the captain that we stopped before reaching Benares. But that was a lie. You know her. She wanted to get closer. We rode into the village and saw hundreds of bodies lying in the streets. Most of the bodies were burnt beyond all recognition, but we could tell that some had been torn to shreds, as if by wild beasts. There were many tracks leaving the village, both of boot and animal. It was as if an entire army swept through Benares and then vanished. The desert is large. Somehow you were lucky enough to avoid crossing paths with this army, Simeon says before cursing to himself. Damn that stubborn Lianlim. We could have warned the captain if we had only known. What can we do? Jubei asks, wanting to do the right thing because of the guilt weighing down upon her after lying and putting Amastus and his guardsmen in danger. I shall tell my master in Enkidu and pray that the captain does not run into this mysterious enemy. The smell, Jubei cries, the memory seared into all of her senses. The smell was so horrid. Simon grinds his teeth, trying to suppress his own fears. I must go tell all that you have brought before me. Jubei nods. Do you think they will be coming here? To kill us all, too? Simeon does not respond, because this is the question he also fears the answer to. A loud horn blows, and the city guardsmen scramble to their lookout posts along the walls. Archers ready themselves and stare out across the wasteland, looking for the threat. Amastus appears in a full gallop on his horse, blowing the horn as he rides towards the gates. The gates are opened as quickly as possible, and Amastus nearly topples from his steed in exhaustion. We discovered the bodies of several women bound with rope, lying dead in the desert. I assumed that slavers had raided Benares, and these were the poor souls who were too weak to keep up with the procession. We rode out to the village and discovered it in ruins, and no one left alive, Amastus says, panting with exhaustion, as one of his men brings him a cup of water. I've never seen raiders skin and strip bodies of their meat, and ghouls do not use knives to do their atrocities. Enkidu approaches, having heard the sound of the horn. Who were they? We backtracked and circled around the marauders and were able to pick off a few of their outliers before being spotted. They were unlike any creatures I've ever seen. They stand on 2 feet like us and wear armor, but instead of horses they ride giant lizards, and their skin ranges in color from a deep red to all shades of blue. Many had horns, and all of their eyes glowed unnaturally. They were surely demons. Enkidu leaves to gather his sword and armor. Enkidu, Amastus says, take a moment to pray for our village and ask your Yazata for help. Nodding, Enkidu runs off. Amastus calls his men together to prepare their horses, and make sure their fortifications are stable. These are no marauders. These creatures are well armed and organized into a military unit. I fear they mean to invade our city. We must ride out to meet them and not allow them the opportunity for siege. They were able to breach the walls of Benares, so I do not believe we will be able to hide behind our own for long. Captain Rivius grins as his forces approach the ridge overlooking Kutal-Tukuk. The first soldier to breach their walls shall lay claim to any slave he wishes. The Sicarii shout with excitement and pump their fists into the air. The grand promises made to them of riches to plunder and humans to slaughter is finally being made good. The majority of the members of Rivius's regiment are not professional soldiers, but rather conscripts and criminals. Rivius tries to pay this no mind, or think of it as an insult to King Marduk. To him, it is a great honor to lead the initial forces. Without his scouting party, the four great generals could very well fall into a trap. He finds it comforting that even the likes of Yamura and Hui will be indebted to him upon his success. To motivate his troops and have them put aside their fears and reservations, he does all he can to drive up their adrenaline and fuel their bloodlust. Never again will you have such an opportunity to loot and plunder. Never again will you be able to say that you took part in the conquest and subjugation of an entire species. We go forth into the human world as conquerors. We will crush the humans beneath our feet. We will trample their fields and slaughter their livestock. We will burn their cities and devour their flesh. We do not simply come to lay claim to this world. No, we come to eradicate the human vermin that infest our new world. We will humiliate and desecrate all they hold important. In the name of King Marduk, we are the pioneers of a new world. It is not the elites or the generals that have the privilege of deflowering this land. It is you and me. We get the honor of being the first and last images of the Sicarii the humans will ever see. Now raise your swords and shout for me, for King Marduk, and for Averno. After this, Rivius receives deafening cheers and works his army into a frenzy. The Sicarii captain grins with satisfaction. One by one, these weak human settlements will fall, and I shall be promoted for my spectacular victories this day, he says, grinning as the first of his soldiers begin towards the city gates. Soon, I shall be named the 5th great general and get the proper respect that I deserve.